What is going on out there? Couz's Corner family, here we are live for another Couz's Corner live stream. This one unexpected. Saw some news come across my Twitter feed a little while ago and decided I would come on here and talk about it with you guys, let you guys chime in with your thoughts and go from there. What's up, Michael Pressler? Thanks for hopping in, my man. Here we go, folks. So, about 3 hours ago or so, Jim Williams, who I've had on my show, had the privilege of having on my show, an Emmy-winning former media executive, now a consultant, also a columnist for Forbes, put out a tweet a couple of hours ago that I'm going to share with you right now regarding the Big Ten, Pac-12, Big 12, and that whole situation. And here's that tweet, and it reads: "My Big Ten sources tell me why." Let me start over. My Big Ten sources tell me they will not consider adding Oregon, Oregon and Washington until it is clear Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah are leaving the Pac-12 for the Big 12. Here's a quote from his source: "We can wait to see how this plays out. If the Pac-12 is together, we will reconsider our timeline for expansion." End quote. So, man, that's a big quote right there. That's a big statement. So basically, the Big Ten does not plan to expand, or at least they don't plan to add Oregon and Washington from the Pac unless the Pac is basically falling apart anyway. So this tells me, just looking at this from the outside, this tells me that the Pac doesn't want to be responsible for destroying the Big Ten doesn't want to be responsible for destroying the Pac-12. Is it for legal reasons? Do they not want to be accused of, collusion? Or is it simply they want to see the Pac survive, but hey, if it's not going to survive anyway, we'll take the quote unquote scraps. And I'm not calling Oregon and Washington scraps. They're the top two brands in that league. But you get my drift. They do not want to be responsible for tearing this conference apart. It also tells me that if this happens, if the Big 12 does get these four corner schools, or at least a couple of them or whatever, and then the Big 10 does decide to take Oregon and Washington, the Big 12 is going to still be looked at as the bad guy here, even though the Big 10 is the ones who came in and grabbed UCLA and USC already. All of the shots are being fired from Pac-12 country to the Big 12. No, they're not firing shots at the Big 10 at all, because the Big 10 is sitting back waiting for the conference to collapse, and then they're going to come in and take the schools they want. And they're going to come out smelling like a rose, looking like the good guy, while the Big 12 is going to look like the bad guy. But hey, you know what? Us here over at Big 12 country, bring it on. We don't care. We'll take it. We're big boys. Anyway, that being said, I thought you guys might find that very interesting. Now, this could also tie in a little bit with the comments made in the Athletic article that came out, or articles, I should say, but there's mainly one I want to focus on here. This could tie in to what the Big Ten commissioner had to say at his opening press conference yesterday, and also with what some of the school presidents and chancellors had to say in an interview with the Athletic. And I'm going to share that article with you as well here in just a second. Let me get it pulled up here for you. But yeah, this is very interesting stuff. And look, there's not anybody that's going to be more well connected than Jim Smith. Very well connected. But here's an article that was written in the Athletic, or at least part of it. I'm not going to show you the whole article. I can link to it in the description. It is behind a paywall, so I don't want to show the whole article. But it says, now this was written by Nicole Auerbach, and she says, with USC and UCLA set to join the Big Ten next summer, the conference is about 14 months away from becoming a 16-school league. But will the Big Ten grow beyond that anytime soon? Conference expansion is, quote, not really at the top of our list at the moment, end quote. University of Illinois Chancellor Robert J. Jones told The Athletic on Friday. Another quote from Jones: "Our first priority is to successfully integrate UCLA and USC. At that time, we know that the landscape is, or at the same time, I should say, we know that the landscape is shifting, and for us, it's a time to be very thoughtful and analytical. Are we thinking about realignment? Of course. We're doing analysis, the cost, the benefits of staying at 16 or moving up. It's not something we're going to do just to react to what other conferences may choose to do." Remember that statement. We're only going to do what's best for our current membership, and there has to be some value added for expanding beyond, end quote. Jones, the chair of the Big Ten's Council of Presidents and Chancellors, represented the group at new Big Ten Commissioner Tony Petitti's introductory press conference Friday. He said he's less concerned about the travel and logistics. And I don't want to get into that piece. I want to focus on realignment here. But there's more down below. It says, when asked about further expansion during his news conference, Petitti, who's the new Big Ten commissioner, also pointed to integrating USC and UCLA as a priority, but added, and I quote, "My job is to make sure the conference is as strong in the present and future as it's always been," end quote. So he basically dodged the issue, didn't want to talk about it. It's kind of how I read that. Just says, what they would all say, we've got to look out for the best of the conference in the future and the present. Jones, back to the Illinois chancellor, said that the Big Ten did not consider adding more than 2 LA schools last summer, a seismic late June announcement that came less than a year after Oklahoma and Texas announced their intention to leave the Big 12 for the SEC. He said the conference has not decided whether it would only add future schools as full members, which earn the exact same share of media rights revenue as the existing members. And he says, and I quote, "We don't have a position on that yet." He reiterated that the league would need to know that any additional schools bring enough value to make such a move worthwhile. He said it would be a data-driven decision that aligns with the vision of where we want to see the conference in the next decade and the decades beyond. So, but he goes on to say this, "I'd be lying if I said we weren't thinking about it, but it's not at the top of the list. There's no sense of urgency about it at this point." So, Illinois' chancellor said it's not a top priority, but they are thinking about it, and they have not discussed whether or not they will take teams as full members only or would be willing to take teams as partial members, which has been rumored about Oregon and Washington coming in for only half the shares. Now, here's what I think this means here. If I'm reading between the lines, you take what was told to Jim Williams by his Big Ten sources, you take what the Illinois chancellor is saying here, and here's the conclusion I come to. If the Pac-12 should fall apart and some of their corner schools go to the Big 12 and they see the conference going to collapse, they can then go grab Oregon and Washington at a bargain. They can let Oregon and Washington come into the league at maybe even half of the revenue, which would be what, 35, 40 million a year, or maybe 40 million a year. That would still be more than what they're going to make in the PAC. They wouldn't have to bring them in at a full share, yet they would still get those two very, very highly valuable teams. And those two schools get their home that they want in the Big Ten. They don't get to make as much money as they'd want, but they would at least get more than they're going to get in the PAC. They would have a conference home. The Big Ten gets the brands. Their media partners, Fox, CBS, NBC, they get those two brands. The loser in that case would obviously be the Pac-12 schools that get left out, and could potentially be ESPN because they would lose out on Oregon and the Washington football games. Now, I want to hear what you guys think about this. That's my spiel. That's the articles and the information I wanted to share with you. Now, let's get to the chat. Man, I got a lot of chats here. What's up, Greg Flugar? College football's picked around the corner. Buckle up. Couz best in the business. Thanks, my brother. I don't think I can claim that title, my man. You're one of the best out there, my man. Your channel's blowing up like crazy. John Teal, $2 super chat. Thanks for the support, my man. He says, "I wonder if the Big Ten is going to take Stanford and Cal." My thoughts on that is I doubt it. I don't see them taking Stanford and Cal because I honestly don't see the value in adding them from an athletic perspective. Now, if they want their academics, I could see it. But personally, I think Oregon and Washington are the top two. Now, doesn't mean they can't take all four. They might could take Stanford, Washington, Cal, and Oregon. Who knows? I mean, yeah. Stanford, Washington, Cal, and Oregon. Guys, look, we got 74 people in the chat right now. There's no way for me to get to everybody. If you guys want to support me here at the channel and want to make sure your chat gets read, please throw me a super chat. You can hit the $sign down there where it says say something. Leave me a super chat. Post a comment there. I'll be more likely to see it because it will highlight it for me. Also, Outlaw of College Football's in here. Thanks, my man. He's a channel member. He says, the Big Ten might screw themselves. What if the Big 12 offers Oregon and Washington? Oregon and Washington may not want to wait on the Moody Big Stank Conference. Well, here's my thoughts on that, Outlaw. I understand your point, but I think Oregon and Washington, they don't want to be in the Big 12. I think they've made that clear. They want to be in either the Big 10 or a Pac-12 that survives. I think the Big 12 they would only go to the Big 12 if they absolutely had to. Obviously, they know they can make more money in the Big 10. Even going to the Big 10 at a half share, they would likely make more than the Big 12 at a full share. So I still think going to the Big 10 would be their best option if they have that available, even if, like I said, they have to go in at a smaller share. But I do understand your point, and I'd love to have Oregon and Washington in the conference, but in the Big 12, but I just don't see it happening. Uh, yeah, like I said, guys. Also, please don't forget to like the video real quick. That gets it shown out to more people, and it really helps me. Even if you're watching it on the replay, may not be able to catch it live. Hit that thumbs up button. Throw me a like real quick, and also share it out if you can. Yeah, just like WV Mountaineer with Kenny. He says hit the thumbs down button too. But hey, I hope you like it and don't have to do that. But hey, if that's your prerogative, go for it, man. I'm okay with that. I'm a big boy. See, what are the comments we got here? The door to expansion is cracked open. Bingo, to Master. Bingo. It's still cracked open. And if the way I read this, and this is how I responded to another tweet Jim Williams put out earlier. The way I see this is if the Big 12 is able to get two of the four corner schools, or especially if they're able to get four of them, which I don't see happening. I think it'd be two, maybe three. If that happens, then I think the door swings open wider. Right now, it's just cracked open. It would swing open if these corner schools go to the Big 12. But man, it's going to make the Big 12 is going to be the bad. If this happens, the Big 12 is going to be the bad guy in this situation. But to be honest with you, I'm not sure Brett Yormark cares about that. He just wants to do what's best for his conference. Stanford and Cal could care less. Oh, sorry, I actually hit the button twice. Stanford and Cal could care less about conferences. They would rather go independent. Both of them have about $6 to $7 billion in endowment funds. Good point. They do have a huge endowment, academic endowment funds. John Teal, another $2 super chat. Thanks, my man. Stanford and Cal have location. Big Ten seems big on that. Yeah, they do. They have the San Francisco market. Would the Big Ten want to get in on that? Maybe, and it's very very possible. I'm not ruling it out, but I still think that Oregon and Washington would be their top two targets. Big Dan T chiming in. He says, like you said before, Couz, it's all about rivalries. True that. True that. And now if the Big Ten is really serious about trying to get Notre Dame in the league, maybe they go out and get Stanford to try to entice Notre Dame. But I think Notre Dame is going to do everything it can to stay independent for as long as possible. Big Dan T, again, another comment. He says, I'm okay with being the bad guy if we can grow and survive. Absolutely. Absolutely. Grow and survive is the name of the game right now. It's every conference for themselves. And to be in some cases, you could say it's every team for themselves, every school for themselves. Big Ten doesn't want the stigma of being bullies because they will solidify the ACC against them, and they know that's where the real money is. Miami UNC is better than Oregon and Washington. I don't know if I agree with that statement. I think if you look at the metrics, you will see that Oregon and Washington are bigger brands than Miami and UNC. That's just my opinion, and based on some numbers I've seen, I think Oregon and Washington at least better than North Carolina. Maybe not bigger than Miami, but probably bigger than North Carolina as far as brand recognition in football. Now, if you want to look at basketball, Big Ten wants to really look hard at basketball and build the basketball brand up, then yes, you go out and grab North Carolina. And heck, even Miami has now become a good basketball school too. So that if they want both, then maybe yes, you go that route. I could see that happening potentially. Anybody else see another comment from Outlaw College Football? The Big Ten says they don't want to be the bad guy, but they already are. They started it. They had that 60-year Rose Bowl affair that screwed college football for nearly 70 years on a playoff. Yeah, the Rose Bowl thing is definitely a sticky wicket with a lot of people, and that whole relationship there is a little weird, and it almost kept us from getting a college football playoff because the Rose Bowl just didn't want to come off their quote-unquote tradition to move things down the road and improve the sport and the viewing experience for the fans, in my opinion, and even to help make more money for these universities and these teams. And you could say they started by grabbing USC and UCLA, but in a sense, the SEC started it by grabbing Texas and Oklahoma, if you really want to go down that road. But if Oklahoma and Texas came to and wanted to get in the SEC couldn't say no to that. So I totally understand it. I don't look at anybody here as bad guys. I'll be honest. I look at everybody trying to do what they need to do for their teams and their conferences. That's what they're trying to do. And in the network's case, they're trying to make as much profit as possible. And that's what they're there to do. They're a business. Alan Walker says, Washington and Oregon have huge branding over Stanford and Cal. Agreed. That is money. Kenny says, well, actually, Texas and OU start all the dominoes. Amen to that. Nighttime, thanks for chiming in, my man. He says, at this point, it seems inevitable. The pack collapses. The choice is money and irrelevance or staying on linear TV for chump change. Guys, I'm going to do something here that I haven't done before. I'm going to have a call-in show. I've never done that before. I'm going to take this link. I'm going to paste it in the chat. And if you guys want to join me on here, whether it be on camera or off, by being off, I mean you just don't have to turn your camera on. You can just talk to me. There is the link. You're welcome to join me, and I'll try to get some calls here if you guys want to join me on the show. I've never done this before. It seems to be a popular thing to do for college football YouTubers out there. I know Flugar's got a call-in show. I don't have the fancy setup like he has, but I can use the StreamYard link and let you come in and join me here. So there it is if you want. But, yeah, this is definitely intriguing news here. Michael Pressler says, a smart guy said we're closer to ACC breaking up. Do you think the Big 10 and Big 12 are pivoting to the ACC? I think it's possible they're pivoting that way, and I think if the Pac-12 continues to drag their feet on this, that could happen. I said in a video I actually just posted this morning about this topic. The ACC thing does seem to be gaining a lot of traction, getting a lot more attention now, thanks a lot to Florida State's athletic director, and then thanks to a lot of YouTube guys out there, people who do this like myself, who have brought attention to this issue. I'll be honest with you, it's grown legs a lot because, in my opinion, of folks. I'm not saying me necessarily, but there was some Florida State sites that talked about it. I'm sure there are sites for other schools. A Clemson site is now talking about it. Or Clemson channel, I should say, is now talking about it. So thanks to the media, whether it be traditional media or even non-traditional like YouTube, it's gaining traction, in my opinion. Presser says, yeah, Couz, you're the smart guy. I'm not going to say that. But I do think it is gaining traction. I've got to give credit to the people I got the info from. A lot of great content out there on those topics. JDXVSS says, if you're Boston College, what are you doing? That is, I think Boston College, Syracuse, Wake Forest, teams like that could potentially be in trouble here. And that's the schools that I think should be the most concerned. We got our first caller here, Robert France. Robert, thanks for joining.
Hey, Couz.
How you doing?
All right, it's Robert France.
I think you're muted.
Oh, no, I'm not muted. Let me try. Can you hear me?
Still can't hear you. Hold on. Try it again.
Can you hear me now? Hello?
Hold on. Oh, another problem. 1 second. Try it again.
Can you hear me now?
Gotcha.
That's the reason why I wear headphones too.
Yeah, I totally forgot to do that. And I realized, crap. See, what happens is, for those of you who don't know, when you I have my mic plugged into a USB port, right? So if you don't have headphones plugged into the headphone port, it treats your mic as your
headphones
audio device. Yeah. So that's why.
Yeah.
But here we got John Till, another $5 super chat. Let me address that real quick. It says, if the Four Corners went to the Big 12, then the SEC should run a zone blitz, jump the flats, and intercept Washington and Oregon from the Big 10. Figure out the rest later. Yeah, that would really throw a wrench into the whole thing, wouldn't it, Robert?
Yeah, I think that Big Ten's just toying with Washington, Oregon. Truthfully, saying that.
Yeah,
I think that's just a ploy because look where if they really want to get at any teams that would entice a big fish like, for example, Notre Dame. Why would you bring in Oregon and Washington?
Right.
It's like a lot of people think I'm crazy. I'm like, they don't bring anything that really the Big Ten wants.
The Oregon and Washington?
I'm saying what the Big Ten wants that will entice people to come.
I disagree with that.
I'm saying in the aspect of big name, like bringing like Notre Dame or something like that.
I got you. No, I get that. I understand. Yeah. Notre Dame's Notre Dame's the biggest name out there.
Besides BYU too.
Right. I get that.
And I think the Big Ten kicked themselves in not signing getting big BYU themselves either.
Potentially. I mean, I think anybody's crazy not wanting BYU, if you want my honest opinion.
Oh yeah, definitely.
They're a massive brand, and I don't think I didn't even realize it until I started meeting and chatting with, not meeting in person, but you get it. Started chatting with a lot more BYU people.
Hell, I even talked to.
I never followed them that closely.
I even talked to LDS myself. Most of them are BYU fans.
Right.
So it's like, what do you expect? BYU is one of the biggest LDS schools in the state of Utah.
Right.
Crying out loud.
Absolutely.
So, of course, they're going to be worldwide, not nationwide.
They even show – I didn't know this until my friend Nathan Bomber Brown, who runs the Big 12 Mafia, he mentioned that they even used to watch it. They used to show the games in church.
I didn't know that part.
Yeah, they'd all gather at the church to watch the games. That's how popular it is.
Yeah, because the last time I was in their church, it was not even football season, so I was lucky.
Right.
So I didn't even know that. And so
he said it used to be – at one time it was the only place they could get the games, so they would all gather there and watch them. Basically, AAR, he must have just jumped on. The news is this, AAR. Jim Williams from ESPN, well, he's a former executive at ESPN, or former producer, and he's now a columnist for Forbes, put out a tweet earlier today saying that the Big Ten, a Big Ten source told him that they would not even consider taking Oregon and Washington until they see what happens with the four corner schools and if they go to the Big 12 or not. If the four corner schools go to the Big 12, then they would consider Oregon and Washington. But until then, they're saying they're not going to. That's the news.
Yeah, the only thing I think is most likely also they want to see how USC and UCLA handle the Big Ten, too, even before even thinking of adding them in. I'm like, wait until the end of the season. Most likely, I would say bear off for even Oregon and Washington to go to the Big 12 just for that point. So they're stable and they don't have to worry about losing nothing if they stick around with the Pac-12.
Right.
And most of them don't get that point. I'm like, that's the reason, just to stick around, survive. Then hopefully you can get into the Big Ten once they figure out what's going on with USC and UCLA. If they do very well, then you have a better chance.
Right.
But if you try jumping in with them, you might all fail at once.
Right. $2 super chat from John Teal again. Thank you, John. Thanks for the support, man. It means a lot. It says if the Big Ten wants Notre Dame, then get Stanford. It's a rivalry game, and that's what I mentioned earlier.
Oh yeah, I even said it to the Oregon fans. They're like, "Why? Never even think of that point." That's the funny thing.
Welcome in, Mr. WVU Mountaineer with Kenny. How you doing, Kenny?
Hey, how you doing, Couz and Mountaineer Nation? Glad to be able to come on here with you.
Absolutely, man. What are your thoughts about this news that Mr. Jim Williams gave us today?
Well, here's what I think. I think if the Pac-12 waits too long, they could be out staring in.
Mm-hmm.
What they need to do is go ahead and jump because they're not going to get no more money. I mean, everybody's pinched. So the Big 12, when they went out and Brett Yormark, he was genius in doing it and going out and getting a TV deal before the Pac-12.
Right.
If he hadn't done it, we'd have been in the situation of the Pac-12.
Right.
So
I agree.
And with all the news coming from the ACC, I see Brett Yormark going after Pitt, Syracuse, Virginia Tech, and also Louisville. Mm-hmm. Those four right there, if they get them in, those will be the best rivals for West Virginia. Mm-hmm. They'd be right close to us. It's better travel. And the four corners will be left out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Until we do another realignment.
And don't forget, Louisville's a big rival for Cincinnati as well.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So that'd be another good rivalry game we could get in.
Yeah, and that brings a lot more eyeballs, and this could save Syracuse's football program.
Definitely, I agree with that.
Got a comment here from AAR. He says they don't want to get sued for blowing up the Pac-12. Yeah, I actually mentioned that in my opening. They want the Big 12 to do their dirty work, and that's why. And even Jim Williams put out another tweet that I didn't share, but yes, it would make the Big 12 look like the bad guys if that happens.
Mm-hmm.
But Jim said he reminded his Big 12, Big 10 people that you guys were the ones that took USC and UCLA. So who's really the bad guys here?
Mm-hmm.
But they don't ever want to talk about that. The Pac-12 never throws any shade towards the Big 10 whatsoever. They want to keep throwing it at the Big 12 people.
Yeah, because they're afraid of the Big 10 because they might be not allowed to come in then.
Yeah. I can live with being the bad guy as long as we survive.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Connor, you need to look up the definition of clickbait, my man. It's not clickbait. And watch the beginning of the video. That's all I'm going to say. John Teal, another super chat. Thanks, man. Says ACC death cry could be an extension to Washington, Oregon, Stanford, Cal. That could be enough to make Notre Dame sign that marriage license.
Mm-hmm.
Never know.
Yeah.
Well, too, this could have been a ploy for the ACC to get the Pac-12 to make their move.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we got to watch out for the smoke screen. You know what I'm saying?
Connor,
I get that point.
Connor, if I put a title on there that doesn't make people want to click on my video, then nobody watches my video, dude. That's how this thing works.
Mm-hmm. And if it's not lying, anyways, you said at the beginning of the video.
I'm not lying.
Mm-hmm. I was here watching it.
Right. Clickbait is when you and I'm not mad at him for this. He has a right to his opinion. I'm just going to explain the definition of clickbait. Clickbait is when I put something on my title and thumbnail that has nothing to do with my video. That's clickbait. This is not clickbait. You just don't you don't agree with what I'm saying, so you call it clickbait.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. But I do appreciate you being in here, man. Nonetheless, I welcome all opinions in here. As long as you don't get personal and attack people, you're welcome to. People are welcome to give their opinions. But I did want to address that. People throw the clickbait word around too much without knowing what it really means.
Heck, I know one guy that's out of Pittsburgh, urinating tree. His one podcast is Clickbait Sports.
Oh, is it?
Yeah,
that's funny.
Yeah, he's outside of Pittsburgh, so I'm like, oh, that's a good. The sounds of a person I recognize the voice familiar with because of being born and raised in Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Oh, opinions on NC State. I got to answer this real quick, and then I'm going to let Larry Pilgrim in here. Says, I would love to see NC State in the Big 12. I love NC State. Obviously, West Virginia got Tony Gibson as a defensive coordinator there now, so it's made me pay a little bit more attention to them. But I like their culture there. I think they would actually be a pretty decent fit in the Big 12 culturally, more so than some other ACC teams. I think they would be a fit. I think Virginia Tech would be a fit. I think Louisville would be a good fit.
Definitely.
I don't know that Pitt would be, but I'd love to have him anyway, just so we can play him every year.
Well, Pitt would have no choice but to go to the Big 12.
Yeah, unless they can get in the Big 10. And they
Big 10 won't want them. That's the one thing they won't want them.
They probably won't. They do have the AAU. They do have the AAU thing working.
Yeah, but you have to think Penn State. That's the reason.
Right.
Remember, I'm from that side of the state, from the eastern side of the state.
Are you?
So I know. I know enough about Penn State, even though I live in Texas now.
Yeah, that's the reason why Penn State left. They didn't want to play Pitt.
They just don't want to deal with Pitt. That's the reason, because of how people in Pittsburgh are.
Right.
It's nothing more than that. They just don't want to deal with it.
Yeah.
Heck, I'm from the eastern side of the state. I couldn't stand them.
We have Larry Pilgrim in here. Larry, how you doing?
Good, Couz. How you doing, bud?
I'm good. I just want to say I know you're a Pac-12 guy, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, I'm a Utah guy.
Right. But you know what?
Man.
But Larry Pilgrim has been one of the most respectful people in this whole argument between, you see all the vitriol thrown at people on Twitter and even on YouTube. Larry, that's not Larry, man. He's being courteous, kind, respectful to people. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. I look at, all of us we're a fan of our team first, no matter what conference they're in, and then your affiliation. So I just try to, people are just a fan of their team and they have their own self-interest. So you can't, you can't be ignorant to them, because you'd be the same in their shoes. So that's my stance on that. And as far as the Big 12 being the bad guy, what really screwed this up was Oregon and Washington trying to run up and get to the Big 10 after the announcement. That's what screwed everything up. If Oregon and Washington would have been solid and said, we're going to be good, we're going to go after a good deal, I think it would have been different. Because if you guys remember, when they first went to the table, there was an offer on the table for a 5, a 10, and a 12-year deal. And I think it was for a grant of rights, and I think it was $300 million for a 10-year, 25 for a 5, and I think it was $350 for the 12-year is what it was.
Right.
And Washington and Oregon shot that down, said we were only going to, they only wanted to do a 5-year. So in all this mess, Oregon and Washington, in my opinion, were the ones that messed this whole thing up from the get when, Phil Knight's trying to buy his way into the Big Ten. And the other thing in that article, the Illinois chancellor also stated, so Jim Williams has been pretty good, but the chancellor at Illinois said, we're not adding any Pac-12 teams out of charity. So if the four corners left, Oregon and Washington are charity. And he said no. The other point, let's be honest, you guys know who ran the Big 12 forever, right? Mm-hmm. You could have had Texas Tech's chancellor could have come out and ran his mouth and said whatever he wanted. He had no weight in the room. As far as I'm concerned, you have to listen to Ohio State and Michigan, what they're saying. These other chancellors, presidents, ADs, they're just talking out their butt, because Ohio State has already said, we want to get USC and UCLA in here, find out where we're at before we do anything else. And to be honest, they're already Big Ten, Ohio State, Michigan are already ducking good competition. Why the hell are you going to sign on to bring them in to play them every other year? USC is going to give them hell. So, so that's my take on the whole thing. I think the only way the Pac-12s, they're going to have to take a Apple 100% streaming. I just don't see any other way around it.
Yeah, and it's going to be at least a 10-year grant of rights too, on top of it.
Larry, I got a question for you. What's the anxiety of all this for the fan base?
It depends on which fan base you're talking. I don't know if any Stanford or Cal fans really know what's going on. They might not even know they don't have a media deal, because they've just been non-existent. The Arizona, Colorado, the Four Corner schools have actually, their fans have been pretty involved, as well as Oregon State fans have been pretty involved, because I'd be scared shitless if I was Washington State or Oregon State. Utah, we're in a really weird predicament because we're the third most valuable to a degree. I mean, Stanford and California are worth more than Utah if you're taking academics into the overall. But as far as athletics go, Utah would be in third. We don't have enough clout to get into anywhere else. And so we're kind of stuck. But we know as a fan base, we have enough following that we have value. So we're going to stay in a P5 as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, we're pretty nervous. I don't have any disrespect for the Big 12. It's just my university doesn't want to go there.
Right.
They just don't.
Yeah.
But also locks down the rivalry that you have with BYU. That's the best idea for that.
Yeah, hopefully it's not as toxic as it's become. It used to be just a regular, it used to just be a regular rivalry, and you were fans of both the teams until they played, and you rooted for both teams when they, and that it all changed because Utah went to the Pac-12, and they can't help BYU get in anywhere. We all know that. We all know why. Utah barely got their butts in. So we couldn't have helped BYU other than playing them every year in their schedule. And now you're talking about Utah actually had more to lose by playing BYU than they had to gain, because if you lost to them, you got knocked down. And if you beat them, you didn't get a lot of credit. So I don't know if you guys know, how that works. If you lose to a team that's not a Power 5, you get knocked down, and if you beat them, they'll say, "Well, you were supposed to."
Right. That's one of the reasons West Virginia doesn't play Marshall in football, I think.
But now you don't have that argument anymore now, because both of you are Power 5. Exactly.
Exactly. Now, if they get in there and start doing decent, and now, there's a reward. There's, if you beat them. And so Utah played them. They really didn't have to, and they did. And it's an in-state thing. I didn't mind the rivalry for years, but it got ugly once Utah went to the Pac-12. So it became a G5 versus a P5 rivalry, if you think about it.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, Marshall, West Virginia, if they beat you, boy, holy crap.
Season's over.
So you guys can relate to that. So yeah, BYU, I'm kind of happy they got in the Big 12. It's been coming for them.
All right, I got a couple super chats I need to get to here. K-Do, Kansas fan, thank you for the super chat and the support, my man. He says, I say man, I'm assuming it's a man because 96% of my viewers are. But he says, if Washington and Oregon want a path to the Big Ten, all they have to do is demand unequal revenue sharing to push the Four Corners to the Big 12. And I saw somebody comment on that. That's
I've
like
heard that
chess.
before.
Yeah, that'd be like playing chess. It's pretty.
Yeah. If you guys remember, they actually remember when all this first started going down that they were talking about percentages of Stanford, Cal, Oregon, Washington getting most of the situation there. And to be honest, your Mark coming in and saying, hey, we value the Four Corners, gave the Four Corners leverage to tell Oregon and Washington you can have unequal shares with the new G5s you're going to bring in to complete your conference.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, like I said in my opening, I mean, you could say, obviously the Pac-12, or I'm sorry, the Big Ten's probably trying to avoid a lawsuit because they don't want to be responsible for destroying the conference, right? But at the same time, it's probably smart because if the Pac falls apart, they can get Oregon and Washington a bargain at that point, right? They can get them in for half the shares, or if not worse, if not less than half. You know,
I was shooting like 25% of a share
because they're going to be desperate to get in, and the Big 12 at that point might not be able to get them because the Big 12's already taken 4 other teams or 3 or whatever, so they don't have room for them anymore. So at that point, you know what I'm saying? So maybe that's the play. Maybe it's a business thing where let's wait it out. We can get them for less of a payout.
I've even said that in Schwam's Twitter thread. Why just wait? Let them really suffer and see if you can get them for way less.
Right. Yeah.
And a lot of Oregon fans, they are stubborn. Some of those Oregon fans, it's trying to get it through their head.
I don't see how Pac-12 can expand anyways, as unstable as it is right now. I mean, to me, it would be useless for them to go in because you don't know what's going to happen.
And John Till got a super chat.
Yeah. I was waiting for you guys to speak. But yeah, John Till, $10. Thanks for the support, my man. He says, I have to disagree with the Utah fan, respectfully. Ohio State and Michigan would be fools to block Washington, Oregon, Stanford, or Cal. Would you give USC and UCLA complete control of everything west
of Nebraska?
Okay.
Yeah. In my case, I think they'll do the same thing they did with Notre Dame in the early days of the Big Ten. Same thing. So I wouldn't be surprised.
And my answer to that question, or to that statement there, is if the Big Ten says we're good for now, go get your 5-6 year deal, Washington and Oregon aren't going anywhere.
Right.
So you don't have to block them. You don't have to take them.
No.
I mean, the Big 12 can't crush the Pac-12. Only the Big 10 can. When you think about it, it's been said, you know, if Oregon and Washington are on board and they're like, let's get this done, and whether they get enough, 20, 25 million, whatever, but if they're in for it, nobody's going anywhere.
Right.
So in my opinion, the Big 10 is the only one that can crush them, and it's through Oregon and Washington. Because like we're saying, Stanford and Cal, they just don't have the numbers, because Stanford has fallen off the map, and I don't see it getting any better because they're not going to get involved with NIL, and anybody that's not got NIL is just going to fall to the wayside.
Well, Larry Pilgrim, what about this? I mean, what happens, because Brett Yormark come out and said that they were going to give them extras, and the extras was they're not going to let them sign more than a 5-year contract, and they could leave at any time and not pay no money.
Did Brett Yormark say that, or is that just rumors? Because I haven't seen any published.
It's been reported. Yeah, it's been reported that they did say that.
Well,
I don't
was
know
it
if it's
MHB3 that reported
I
it?
don't
Or?
think I think it was reported by I don't think it was reported by legit media sources, or when I say
Yeah.
legit, credentialed, well known. I think it was a Twitter deal. I think. Now, I don't remember for sure, but it was out there. It was out there though. Kenny's right on that part.
Yeah, don't you think the other people that are franchised would be rather pissed about that?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, would you? Yeah, if you're happy Texas and Oklahoma's gone, why would you roll out the red carpet for the same situation?
The Big 12 people I've talked to have been it's been kind of a mixed bag. A lot of people are against it. Others are like, hey, if it, rising tides lift all boats. If Oregon and Washington can come into our conference and help us out and get us more recognition, get us a better media deal, improve our brand, then hey, why not do it?
Yeah, and truthfully, I even said to the Oregon fans,
come in for that.
I said to the Oregon fans that actually might make your defense and offense look better because you're going against tougher opponents in the Big 12.
Yeah.
And most of the Oregon fans couldn't understand. The defenses are very nasty in the Big 10. And they're like, because almost every year it's either an SEC school or a Big 10 school to have the nastiest defense every year. So it's like, why not go to the Big 10? I mean, Big 12. Yeah.
From a fan standpoint, I mean, why would you not want to play Washington and Oregon in your conference? From a fan standpoint, that's why I like being in the Pac-12 because it's fun playing Oregon and Washington. I mean, they're just, they're name brands. They filled some pretty decent teams. And so I like playing them. So, I mean, if Oregon and Washington wasn't in the Pac-12, I definitely, I'm going to lose interest in playing, the Arizonas, Colorado, Stanford, Cal.
Right.
So, yeah, I'm not all for that. But I don't know. I've been watching the draft. That's been going pretty good for you guys for the Big 12.
Yeah, it has. Not for my team, but yeah, for the we may go 2 years in a row with nobody drafted, which would be like almost unheard of.
Oh, damn.
I don't know, but I haven't watched it, so maybe they've gotten drafted recently and I just missed it. But
yeah, NFL wise, for my NFL team, oh my God, I'm still screaming at them. But oh well.
And I like Couz. I like Couz that you refer to Jim Williams a lot because when I watch guys, and Sikkim 365 is pretty good, but Jim Williams is one of the best non-biased. Just he's not rude or ignorant or has the pony in the race. He's just really good at reporting.
Right. So, well, and he has no dog in the fight really. He just loves college athletics. He's actually he's actually rooting for everybody to stay together is what he's rooting for. But when he reports something, when he hears something, he reports it. Go ahead, Kenny.
I don't understand why nobody wouldn't pick Dante Stills. Dante Stills is a beast.
Well, it's a NFL. It's more about size. He doesn't have NFL size. Things like that. They look at those kind of things a lot heavier than colleges do. Let me get to this $10 super chat. It says Utah act from Outlaw of College Football. Thank you, Outlaw. He says Utah acts like they are too good for the Pac-12. Utah was in a G5 league 13 short years ago. Get off that elitist high horse. BYU was the last non-Power 5 to win a natty. Utah might not have a choice. Larry, what do you have to say to that?
Okay.
I don't know. Like, how can people say it's a shit show in the Pac-12, and then when somebody says it's a shit show, all of a sudden they're too good because they don't want to be in the shit show? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Outlaw, I like you, man. You're a good dude, but it's like you've said nothing but it's a circus. So if somebody feels like, hey, we're too good for this circus, that you're on a high horse because you don't want to be on the circus. Like, the Utah doesn't feel like they're too good for the Pac-12. Me, as a fan, I stated I'm not excited to play Stanford and Cal and the Arizonas.
I think he may have meant to type Big 12 there instead of Pac-12. I think. I'm not trying to put words in his mouth.
Oh,
but if you put Big 12 in there, it makes more sense.
No.
Plus, I know Outlaw, and he and I have had this conversation, so I think that's what he meant.
Yeah, so Outlaw, from a standpoint, Utah literally, and I know academics, this is about football, it's about athletics. all of Utah's resources come west of the Rockies. Their staff, their students, a lot of their private donations, everything that comes into that university is west of the Rockies. And so the doors they have open there, not saying they won't be open in the future, but things change. It's, athletics and academics are the same and they're different. I don't know if anybody knows, my stepdad was he's a world-renowned professor from the University of Illinois. Mm-hmm. And so I've talked to him a lot about the academic side and what's going on there. And people that say you don't lose research just because you change conferences. Mm-hmm. You do through affiliation, because these grants can be shared. You can put people on these grants, and it's a good thing to build up your conference academically as well as it is athletically, because you're stabilizing financially the institution in general. You talk about endowments, those are just a security deposit in a sense. Like that's just a bond. They're not using these endowments. They're like bonds. Private universities have larger endowments because they're not state funded. Flagship state universities don't need to have a large endowment because that money's coming in every year to fund the university. So it's just having the ties, like he was telling me, because he got his doctorate from Caltech. He would go to Caltech whenever he needed any technology stuff, just out of loyalty and knowing those people. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like picking a subcontractor, to come in and do your stuff. Hey, I know this guy, I'm going to pick him. I don't care what the other guy's got, if he's bidding, whatever. You're going to bring in the person you know.
Right.
So, and they're bringing in a lot of money that way, more than athletics ever thought about.
Right.
So,
but see, the thing that I come back to is we have a home run hire with our commissioner, Brett Yormark. And you got George Kliakoff out there, not even speaking, not even coming out. I have a problem with that. Instead of letting the presidents and the chancellors coming out and saying this, he should be out there voicing his side to counter what other things has been said. So
right. What scares me the worst is Washington, the Huskies. I think it's their president is also she's the head of the board for the Pac-12. She ain't coming out saying anything. From what I've heard, George is kind of an idiot when he talks. Everybody can see that. He's just not there. He's not Brett Yormark, mm-hmm. And what scares me is they're not saying anything. And she's supposed to be kind of the one running the show next to George. She's not saying anything. If you're going to shut this guy down, she should come out and she should start making some releases, but she's not, which tells me Washington's still trying to get their butts in the Big Ten. So That's just my personal opinion and view and kind of how I'm reading the tea leaves. But yeah, George, he's not the brightest guy in the room when it comes to communicating.
He just sticks his foot in his mouth too much. That's probably why he's not talking.
And also put yourself in his position. I think what Stanford wants, what Oregon wants, Washington, Utah, and Arizona, I think they are miles apart. Can you imagine? I don't know how many of you have more than one kid. Trying to bring all those kids in and agree on a TV show or something. Good luck. So
I've been there.
George Kliakoff is the parent. Yeah.
To me, his integrity is drowning. You know what I'm saying? And he needs to come out and squash this stuff. He needs to come out and say what he's going to do to try and make better moves and be proactive instead of reactive.
Yeah, well, every time the guys come out, it's actually ended up being negative press every time he opens his mouth.
And that's what I was going to say. And look, I'm a Big 12 guy, okay, but I'm going to look at this try to be objective here. When you look at anything he says, there will be somebody that will twist it and turn it around or use it against him or something. You know what I'm saying? Now, a lot of that's his fault because of what he says, but even if he comes out and is measured and says, what's he going to say to help the situation? is there really anything he can say? I mean, he can come out and say, hey, yeah, we're looking to do this and this and this. But number one, if you do that, you might be giving away confidential information, right? You can't do that. So I don't know. I don't really know what he could say at this point. Now, he should have done that earlier on. He probably could have done that, Kenny. And I agree with you. But I think now they're so far down the road and things have gotten so chaotic, and the PR that they're having to face is so bad. I don't know that there's anything he can say that's going to help the situation at this point.
I just think they're past the point of no return.
I have a question for the Utah fan.
Yeah.
Big question for you. Do you ever have the feeling that Kliavkoff is like a puppet on leader for these guys?
Well, yeah, he's definitely a puppet.
Yeah, that's what I get from all the hearsay from the Pac-12 and everything else. Just seeing it seems like he's more of a puppet than.
Well, yeah, because I think you've got the thing is like Couz is saying, you've got people that are probably stronger personalities that are telling him what to do. Where like a Brett Yormark is the type of guy. If you came in just because you run, say you run Baylor and you come in and you say, no, the sky is not blue, it's green. Brett Yormark's the type's going to tell you, don't come in here with your BS. This guy's blue. I'm not, he's a straight shooter. George is he's not a snake, but he whirls around the point. Brett Yormark is a straight shooter, in my opinion. George is trying to keep his job. And I also think Apple or Amazon, whoever's dealing with this, is probably also asking for a lot of hush hush on this too. Because I'm just about dead certain Apple, they're secretive to begin with. If Apple is heavily involved, they've probably told them to shut their mouths, don't come out and talk about anything.
Right, probably so.
Because have you heard one number that Apple's willing to offer?
I haven't.
No, in my case, I assume the length of the grant of rights would be at least 10 years, just looking at the MLS contract.
Don't ever sign a 10. 5 to 6 years, in my opinion, is the longest I'll sign.
Yeah, but I think Apple's going to be the one that's going to be strong-arming them. That's what I think, personally.
You think they'll require it?
Yeah, I think they'll require it because that's probably because they'll be like, we did with MLS. Why not you? You're both the
I don't know. Is Apple – so the thing with Apple, if you're Apple, you're dipping your pools into this new water. You don't know if it's too cold, too hot, what effect it's going to have on your body. If I'm Apple, I don't want to sign a 10-year deal because, if I sign a deal and this thing just doesn't take off and whether the Pac-12 has to give rebates or not, you wasted a lot of time, a lot of money into something that's not, producing anything. I wouldn't want to sign a 10-year if I was Apple.
Unless Apple puts in the contract very incentive based, then it could be a win-win for Apple.
Yeah.
And a lose-lose for the Pac-12.
All right, I got 2 super chats to get to here, guys. I got John Teal. If Arizona jumps and Colorado needs to call the Big Ten, I don't think the Big Ten wants Colorado. No offense.
Even if they're AAU, it doesn't really matter in my book.
John Teal, another super chat, man. Thank you. They keep rolling in. He says the only time everyone agrees on what to watch is the movie Back to the Future.
Oh, yeah.
That's funny, man. That's a good one.
Yeah.
By the way, guys, I got 133 people, which is awesome. That's great. For a channel my size, that's phenomenal. Which means it's harder for me it's almost impossible for me to get to all your comments. If you want to make sure I read your comment, drop a super chat. It'll highlight it for me so I can see it. Outlaw College Football, the $2 super chat. Thank you, my man. He says, I meant Big 12. Right. Yeah, I figured you did, man.
Yeah, it wouldn't make sense with the Big 10.
Yeah, I don't know his name. Like, he's pretty harsh, but I respect him and the way he looks at things, a little backstory. I was born in Mississippi. I've lived in California, North Dakota, Louisiana, Nevada, Utah. Now I'm in Florida. So, wow. I've seen I've seen the cultures. I've lived up north, west coast, east coast, down in the south, in the south. And so I don't know. I feel well cultured, and I've ran across Texans and guys from Louisiana, Texas, Oklahoma. They're good people. So, and I think that's why Brett Yormark really fits in the Big 12 because he's, like I said, I think he's a straight shooter. I don't think he screws around. I don't think he's there to waste his own time, let alone the Big 12s. He seems like a guy that's on the move all the time. And so I feel like the Big 12 lucked out getting him. He's a smart guy. He knew what to do at the right time. And so Oregon and Washington, in my opinion, screwed it all up for the Pac-12. I mean, it started with USC, UCLA, but Washington and Oregon trying to get to the Big Ten, I think that was what screwed us.
That is a good possibility.
I want to address his comment by Mr. Monkey says. He says, so I guess unless we pay, our comments don't get read. That's not what I mean, man. What I mean is it's physically impossible for me to see every comment with 125 people in this chat. Physically impossible.
I will try.
And the screen doesn't show me but about 4 or 5 at a time. And every time a new one comes in, the one at the top goes away. So I can't physically see them. The only way I would be able to do that is if I did nothing the entire show but sit and read comments. That's only and I still don't think I'd be able to do it.
Yeah.
I will try to read as many as I can, but I probably won't see it unless there's a super chat. That's it, man. It's not personal. It's just it's not physically possible for me to see it, all of the chats without the highlight. It highlights it in big bold letters on my screen. And let's be honest, man. What's wrong with trying to make a couple bucks every once in a while?
Yeah, like not to throw shade. You're not John Kurtz. That guy will only read if you pay.
Oh, I got you. I was there for a minute. I thought you were insulting me.
No. In fact, I'm giving you a compliment.
I know I'm not John Kurtz. I want to be, but no, I get
it. Well, I don't want you to be him because you just read Monkeys and he didn't pay. John Kurtz would have never read that.
Yeah. Well, but in John's defense, John has a lot more viewers than I do. And he might have 300-400 in a chat like this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's even harder. So I get it. But I appreciate I appreciate that. I do try really hard, man. That's why comments like that kind of bother me, because I know deep down I'm trying to read comments. I just can't do it. But a lot of people don't understand how this works. So I was trying to explain that. And I know it turns people off a lot of times when we ask for money, but that's not really my intent. Outlaw College Football. Thanks for another super chat, man. He says Utah elitist attitude towards BYU is pretty unfounded. Utah might not have a choice if the pack folds. Utah will be begging the Big 12 then. I think I'm gonna answer that first, Outlaw. I think Larry understands that. I think they don't want to go to the Pac. I think they would go to the Big 12 if they knew it was their only option, but they don't really want to unless they have to, because of their academic tie-ins and all that. Is that an accurate statement, Larry, in your opinion?
Yeah, correct. It's correct. Utah gets their resources academically west of the Rockies. So Utah, you know how many undergrad and PhD classes the University of Utah has? I think, 80? I think it was around 8. You can get 80 doctorates from the University of Utah. Mm-hmm. The thing is the subjects that they have those in, they're not, a lot of those people are not in the Big 12. You'd have to go way up north or far east. A lot of their connections to get professors, undergrads, are west of the Rockies. They just don't do a lot of the same type of academic setups that a lot of the universities in the Big 12 do. And it's no pun against the Big 12. It's just where they butter their bread is academics west of the Rockies. So, if you sell a product and you have 2 products, and one of them only yields you $1 and the other is yielding you $10, which one are you going to pay more attention to? And which one is going to be the one that you're going to put more stock in, and you're going to keep that one going strong? Mm-hmm. That's kind of what it is. And right. So they're not elitist. It's just the resources come west of the Rockies. And then BYU, Utah, that's a 10-year subject. So
right. Well, I mean, they're rivals, man. Rivals are not going to like each other. That's the way it works.
They're not, and it didn't used to be that way. They're rivals. They were both actually pretty LDS based for years, and Utah kind of got a little more away from that. And they're still, I think, 20% of University of Utah students, I think, are LDS. Mm-hmm. But it's just different cultures.
See, we have some AAU colleges in our conference that they could partner with and get resources from them. I mean,
we only have one.
That's Kansas.
Yeah.
Right, but you have R1 universities,
Right.
like Baylor's an R1, and they do research, but they're tied in with Texas, I believe, if I read that. They're tied in with Texas on some of their hospital stuff, and so I mean they could get with Baylor and try to do some research, but the thing is Stanford and Cal, what those guys get in private and federal grants, they can't do all the research. They don't have the staff. They don't have, and so Utah, Washington, Arizona, kind of get, hey, we've got too much work. We can't handle it. They'll kick it down to these other AA universities within the conference, or they'll go in on certain situations together where they're, medically, and so you have to look at it from a business side when you're talking about research. Mm-hmm. It's like a bunch of different franchise that have a bunch of different products. And so they're in line with improving their products on the West Coast. Not that, the Midwest doesn't have great universities. They're different universities. They're just different universities. Their curriculums are completely different.
Yeah.
So
West Virginia's R1 as well, by the way. I see a couple of people mentioning R1 in the comments. West Virginia is also an R1 school.
Right.
Yeah.
So is Houston, if I remember right, too.
Texas Tech. Yeah.
You know what's funny?
Mm-hmm.
The Pac-12, when the Big 12 had all those issues, you know what school the Pac-12 said brought the most value of anybody that's in the Big 12 then or is going to be in there now was Houston. Houston was the number one ad. If the Pac-12 expanded,
right
after Texas and Oklahoma left, they had a conglomerate do research, and they said Houston would have been the number one university they would have brought in if USC wouldn't have shot it down.
Right.
If USC wouldn't have shot it down, Houston would be in the Pac-12, and I can't remember if it was Texas Tech or I don't think it was Kansas. There was somebody else that they would have took. It might have been Texas.
I think
Texas
it was TCU is what I heard.
Yeah, it could have been TCU.
I heard it was TCU and Houston were the two they were looking at.
Yeah.
If that would have happened, the Big 12 would be where the Pac-12 is today.
Correct.
Matter of fact, they would probably be gone already, to be honest.
I mean, UCF, oh my gosh, UCF that could be a bigger ad than people see in 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you've got a school that's got a huge enrollment in the third, fourth largest state in the country.
And if I remember right, UCF is in Orlando, if I remember right.
Yeah.
So
I think their enrollment's like 80,000 kids a year.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's insane.
I mean, how many kids are they rolling out in 10 years? How many of them are going to be UCF football fans? I mean, just think about it. UCF the potential that UCF has is just, I think it's probably the biggest of all the ads.
Plus also helping with recruiting too from that state. Hell, now they're like, oh, you can either play home with UCF or you can go to one of the other schools and still come home and play.
Right.
So it makes it very easy.
This is a cool story here. Sorry to cut you off, Robert.
No,
it says Chris Vaughn, Cowboys assistant college scout, just got to draft his own son, Deuce Vaughn.
Nice.
And that came up. I was looking through Twitter, and he's the one who actually got to make the phone call to Deuce and say, "Hey, we're drafting you with." That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is very cool.
And why did it take him to the 6th round to get picked? Is what I can't figure out.
Running backs have not been a priority for since Zeke Elliott.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
They just haven't.
Most teams, they're not drafting running backs very early anymore. It's not worth it.
You have to be really, really elite, like Bijan Robinson, for example, to get.
I was shocked a running back went top 15. In all honesty,
I think a lot of people were. I don't think they were expecting him to get drafted I think they thought he would go in the 1st round, but not that high.
Right, late first, maybe early second. That was the projections I saw. 18 to 25, I think, is somewhere where they had him. And so that's good. He's a good back. How do you guys feel about Texas and Oklahoma leaving the conference. I mean, are you sad and happy all in the same?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned earlier that you look forward to playing Oregon and Washington every year. So if they leave, it's not, and we kind of feel the same. At least I do. I mean, one of the things exciting about getting into the Big 12 for us, we're going to get to play Texas and Oklahoma every year, right? It's a game everybody circles on their calendar, even though we don't. We've only beaten Oklahoma one time, but still, it's a game there's always a chance, right? So you get excited about it. Well, that's going away now. But at the same time, now that we've been in the Big 12 so long, we realize the stranglehold that those two schools had on the conference that prevented the conference from being able to move forward and do things and basically cater to them. Now, once you learn about all that, then you realize, okay, we may actually be better off going forward than we were in the past. Yeah, yes, on the field you'll miss them, but at the same time, you embrace the newness of playing these other teams more often and getting other teams an opportunity to rise up to the top, if that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah, especially Cincinnati coming in from the Big, when we played them in the Big East. I'm looking forward to that game.
Yeah, and by the way, Kenny, Dante Steele got drafted by the Arizona Cardinals in the 6th round, I guess.
Browns and Beers.
Yeah, thanks, Browns and Beers, for that comment. Tim Prangley is fact-checking outlaw here. He says, Holy War Series, Utah 62, 34-5. Let's not let facts get in the way of some good BS.
I didn't want to bring that up, Tim. Yeah, they beat us once in the last 10 years, and you would have thought they won the Super Bowl. So, but guess what? They beat us with a washed-up Baylor QB, Charlie Brewer.
Right.
Does Utah have any national championships?
We don't pull the UCF and say that we got 2. And to be honest, BYU was not the best team in 1984. Please, I hope Christopher Foote is not on here.
Oh yeah. I don't even know if he subscribes to me or not, but
yeah. But BYU, that was, I mean, look at BYU's schedule. They beat a mediocre 6-6 Michigan team 24-17 to get the Natty, because Washington preferred to play Oklahoma over BYU, a very good Oklahoma team, a very good Washington team. So I don't know.
And yeah, that was before the BCS too. So
yeah, that was before that was voted on. And like I said, Utah's no UCF. We went undefeated 2 seasons, even in our BCS, and we don't claim national championships.
Right.
So,
well, if BCS would have been in place, BYU probably wouldn't have been there.
That's kind of what Tim Pringley says. He says 1984 a national championship, LMAO.
Yeah.
Thanks to David Cummings for the $10 donation, man. We appreciate it. And Mr. Monkey says, UT and OU leaving allow the other 8 to actually have a proactive aligned conference. Yeah, you said it better than I did. That's kind of what I was getting to. We're more proactive. We're more aligned. Everybody's pulling the rope in the same direction. So yeah, I mean, we're excited about that. At first it was a punch to the gut. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Hey, Couz?
Yes.
What do you think about Brett Yormark going after basketball teams?
I have mixed feelings on it. Because of the Big East experience, I'm kind of worries me a little bit. But that was different because that was actually a basketball conference that added football teams. This would be the opposite, so to speak. Because in that conference, it's like the basketball schools always wanted to run everything. Whereas in the Big 12, it would probably be the opposite. But at the same time, you also worry about if you start adding teams that are basketball only, you may lose that camaraderie, that everybody pulling the rope in the same direction thing that we just talked about. You could lose that. And I fear that a little bit. I think as united as we are right now is the most united we've ever been as a conference, at least definitely since we've been in. And you might risk losing that if you go out and start adding basketball-only schools. But that's just my take.
I think it should be a good thing because Brett Yormark does his promise of separating basketball and football. That could bring more value to our conference.
I think the numbers that they're getting paid, that's already worked in. It's just, that's my opinion. I mean, separating it, what are they going to say? Okay, you're worth this much in basketball, you're worth this much in football. But maybe he is trying to do it like you're saying, because he's adding, and so he really wants to be able to break it up so that he doesn't have to worry about paying just the basketball only schools part of the other and trying to figure that part out. Mm-hmm. And another question I got, Couz, mm-hmm. and it hasn't been talked about, and if it was my kid, I wouldn't like it, and I don't know how this works, but okay, he's going to supposedly in Jerry world, they're going to have a Big 12 pro day. Mm-hmm. Okay. Is Jerry paying the Big 12 to do that? Is the NFL paying them to do that? Or is the Big 12 having to pay Jerry to rent out Texas Stadium, or is he letting it do it for free?
I have no idea. That's never, right. I've never seen that mentioned, honestly.
I would take a wild guess, maybe for free, maybe.
Right. Maybe for free. Right.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That is a big stretch.
Is he going to turn the air conditioner on? Is he going to pay for, I don't know. Anyway, the other part of that is if my kid was at a university and he had a chance of being drafted, okay, if he doesn't get a combine, or say he does get a combine, I would want my kid to have the teams that are interested in him just coming to my university. I wouldn't want my kid to have to go over where there's 12 other teams and maybe he's got 3 linebacker competitors. Mm-hmm. Like, I would want him to have one-on-one more than, does that make sense?
Yeah.
I don't know if I agree with having another pro day for the conference, right? Because every university has always done their own pro day. Mm-hmm. I think that is more individualistic. I think if you stuff them together, I don't know. I don't agree with it, but okay. What are your thoughts?
Well, I liked it. I like it, but I actually also see when I first heard about it, I was kind of like, wait a minute. Does this mean that guys will get lost in the shuffle because they won't get seen? Because it's going to be harder to focus on 1 or 2 guys when you got dozens of them out there, right? Versus a handful. So that was my first thought. But once I heard more people talking about it and talking about the exposure it brings for the conference, being on the NFL Network and all that, then I heard somebody, I think it was even Sick from 365, mention how it will actually make it easier for scouts maybe to get to everybody's pro day. They only have to go to one location and versus traveling around the whole conference.
Yeah,
that was another point.
Also, I was thinking also maybe even if players are injured, it gives them a little bit of time to heal up before doing it too.
Right. I think the exposure would be kind of the only positive I would see in it that would really be a definite positive, is if he could get a major network to air it.
Oh, it's on NFL Network.
Yeah, then that's the net positive. The other stuff, I don't see it as a positive. And also the Mexico thing, is ESPN and Fox going to allow Big 12 to sell rights to Mexico, or is ESPN and Fox going to start airing games in Mexico?
I don't know. There's not been any details that I've seen come out on that, on what their purpose is there. Only thing I've heard is Brett Yormark say we're going to Mexico to start Big 12 Mexico, or look at starting Big 12 Mexico. And that's kind of where they stopped. I haven't heard any elaboration on it. If you guys have, let me know, because I haven't.
Should just do the pro day in Mexico.
There you
go. You get a lot of kids there.
Yeah.
Well, Couz, I'm going to jump off here and let somebody else come in, buddy.
Yeah, man. Well, I'm actually going to be ending it here soon anyway. But thanks for coming on, man.
All right. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
And Mountaineer Nation.
Sorry, I'm sorry. I put. What were you saying? I accidentally cut you off.
Stay safe, Mountaineer Nation, and all the other conferences. Stay safe.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, man.
Yeah, thanks.
But yeah, it's we got some trash talk going on here in the chat room, but pretty interesting to read. But of course, I can't show them all. There was one here I wanted to touch on. Oh, the one that's on the screen. I've already highlighted. But Mr. Monkey says he liked the talk we were having about basketball. Mm-hmm. He actually says being too strong to ignore in basketball would be a good thing for the Big 12, and I see that too. I mean, like I said, I just the Big East thing has kind of scarred me a little bit, so it's hard for me to get past it. But
yeah, I remember when Golden Blue Dude mentioned about Villanova bringing them into the Big 12 for basketball only. I'm like, I'm rattling off. Okay, what was rivals of Villanova in basketball? I'm like running off the top of my head because I'm from that side of the state. I'm like Temple, LaSalle. I'm like, probably if you bring Connecticut and also Temple, you can bring them into the Big Ten, not just as a basketball member either, and help those two schools out football-wise too. Yeah. I'm like, I was rattling off some things when Golden Blue Dude said about that. I'm like, that would be the best option, really. If you want to bring in a Villanova, because that is a good basketball program.
Absolutely, it is. And if you bring in, to me, if you want to bring in, people like that, I mean, I guess if it helps the conference make more money, which in turn helps my team, I guess I'm okay with it.
And it also might even help Villanova bring their program up because they're FCS right now, if I remember right.
Yeah, in football they are. That's correct.
Yeah, so it would help their football program too. Maybe get them, encourage them to actually get in football.
Yeah, I'm on my phone, so I'm not seeing the YouTube any trash talk going on because I'm on the StreamYard on my phone.
Probably
so
a good thing because some of it's directed to you. BYU people in here do not like you. Let's just put it at that.
Well, I've pissed off a few Big 12 fans, but you know what? I mean, like I said, I've been all around this country. I've seen every culture. And if you can't look at another person and say that's their kid or that's their team and try to look at it from their standpoint, then you're kind of an ignorant. I don't want to call people names, but like you need to grow a little bit because I don't walk in their shoes. They don't walk in mine. So I try to respect that, and so, if you put anybody in the position I'm in or, my vantage point, maybe they disagree, whatever, but it's not respectfully disagree. That's my issue I have with a lot of Big 12 fans that I've come across, and a lot of them have been great. And some of them are just, for whatever reason, I mean, they're just downright ignorant, and so trying to defend my team and being called an elitist academic, whatever, You know what? My stepdaughter graduated from the University of Utah. I would have never let her go to BYU. I just wouldn't. And would I have let her go somewhere else? I would have. I'm fine with her going wherever she wants.
Right.
But I understand the university and what they're trying to do, not just athletically. Academics are what universities were founded on, not minor league athletics, which they are becoming. I understand that, and it's becoming big money. People are talking about it being a front door for academics, but half of these kids that go to these schools could give a crap less about the football, basketball, any of that. They're in there to go get their degree and go get a job. They don't care. They don't go to the games. They don't. It's not like that. A lot of students are not all up in the athletics. They're in the academics.
Yeah, that seems like a West Coast thing right there, where you're talking right there.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. West Coast is very family based, and people don't understand. You're taking your kids to little league football, basketball, soccer. They all run on Saturday mornings, and it's hard to get invested into football when you have kids. And they have a lot of kids, and their kids come first. And also you've got to figure in the West, like Utah, they have snow. They're locked indoors 6 months. So come September, October in the fall, that's the best time to go up to the mountains, to go fishing, to go camping, so you're competing with the outdoors. Yeah, and I don't know if you've been to Utah. It's beautiful. The mountains. I mean,
I've seen pictures. I'm originally from the East Coast, so I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So on Saturday, would you rather be up sitting next to a campfire on Saturday night, with your fish catch, or be at home, which you've been locked indoors for 6 months watching a football game?
Yeah, I understand your point. Yeah, I understand your point.
Different. I live in Florida. You got the beaches. You're either going to the beach, the bar, or the golf course. I mean, that's Florida from what
So that's pretty similar to Texas, where I live now. How I used to live in Pennsylvania, football is what they live for. So it's a little bit different.
Yeah. K-Do, another super chat. Thank you, my man. And by the way, he reiterated on another comment that he is a dude. Thank you. The Pro Day benefits those schools with lesser football brand. This gives those players a chance to showcase their talents in front of a wider scout audience. Yeah, that's. I think that's the big argument for it. Is the gives these players more exposure and gives the conference more exposure as well.
Right.
Real quick, I want to advertise a show that's coming up. Myself, Josh Neighbors with Locked On Big 12.
Okay.
Will be on the Outlaw of College Football representing the Big 12 on Wednesday night at 8:30 Eastern Time. Representing the Pac-12 will be Tony Altimore and
Tim?
No, not Tim. Spencer McLaughlin with Locked On Pac-12. I had to think. I don't know Spencer that well. I was having to think of his name. But so should be an interesting discussion. I don't know if it's going to be set up like a debate type format or if it's just going to be a discussion, but nonetheless, it should be interesting. 8:30 p.m. Wednesday night, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time, Wednesday night, May the 3rd, I believe it is, on the Voice of College Football channel. So
Mark Rogers.
Mark Rogers. Be sure to tune into that, yeah. And
awesome.
and just to preface it, I know Big 12 fans have huge problems with Tony Altimore. I get it. I understand why. I myself try to be respectful. Tony has been kind to me personally. He actually helped me a lot early on in my channel by coming on my show, giving me data to use, all this stuff. So I have no personal animosity towards Tony Altimore. Do I like a lot of the things he has said and done? I do not. And I have told him that in private conversations. But I'm not going to go on there and try to start being a-hole, which a lot of people I think are expecting me to do. I'm not going to do that, okay? Number one, it's not my show, it's Mark's show, and I got to respect him. And I think if you have a more laid-back, respectful discussion, I think I think it will be more productive in that manner anyway. May not be as entertaining. I think it'll be more
Couz, it brings something to light. There was in this community, because a lot of us, we make the rounds. A lot of us make the rounds to Mark, to Flug. We all make the rounds. 365, the Monty Show. We all watch a lot of those. And Golden Blue Dude. When that guy passed away, it brings light that we're actually kind of a family, dysfunctional. And we can agree to disagree, but we need to respect each other and just understand we're all humans trying to get through life and we have our own interests.
Right. And
we can respect everybody. And, when you lose something, that brings that into focus. And so it's only been 3 weeks. Yeah, hopefully we can retain a little bit of focus of respect.
Right.
Yeah.
Mr. Monkey says he didn't mean to rub me the wrong way. And I get it, man. And it did kind of rub me the wrong way, but you know what? I'm also working on developing a thicker skin while I do this. So apologies if I didn't like it, but hopefully I at least explain why I read the ones that are highlighted. Number one, if somebody pays for something, obviously, you've got to try to put their comment up first. But I do try to read other comments. I just don't always get to them, and I apologize for that.
I've seen Mr. Monkeys on a lot of different chats, and
I have too.
He's been pretty good guy or person. Don't know,
Yeah, he seems to be. I mean, he actually has been commenting a lot under my videos lately. So I definitely recognize the name, and I appreciate his support of my channel. And I appreciate him sticking around, even though I may not have recognized his comments early on in the chat. But anywho, and I admit that sometimes I get rubbed the wrong way. I'm human.
What's your tie-ins with Joey? Are you working with Joey a little bit on anything?
Joey and I are more or less just, I guess you could say we're friends. I mean, we don't work together as far as, he's got several different YouTube guys he works with, but I told Joey early on, I said, I'm a micromanager, man, and I do not feel comfortable giving anybody else that much control of what I do.
Damn.
Okay.
It just wouldn't work.
Right.
But we're still friends. I mean,
okay.
That's the extent of it. But I mean, he has helped me out here and there on a few things. But
I was just curious on the collab stuff.
Right.
I didn't, I don't know your personalities.
He did get me. He did help me get. He did help me get on the. I did some. I contributed some to the College of West Virginia channel over on the Voice of College Football, and that was thanks to Joey and Golden Blue Dude. So I do give them credit for that, and that got me in the door with Mark, and it's helped me develop a little bit of a relationship with Mark. So he's definitely helped me out. I don't want to say he's never helped me because he has, but we're not,
right,
co-workers or colleagues or whatever you want to call it. We're just friends.
Okay.
But anyway, well, guys, listen, I'm going to end it here real quick. It's been an hour and 25 minutes. This has been fun. This is the first time I've ever done this and let people what a quote unquote call-in show before. It's been fun, actually.
It has been fun.
I've always been skeptical to do it because I just didn't know if I would be able to keep up with everything. But but I like it. I think it worked out okay. I might do it again one of these days.
All right. Well, appreciate you bringing me on, Couz.
Larry, Robert, thank you guys.
No problem.
And everybody out there that's watching, I hope you guys enjoyed it, and hope we were able to bring you some useful content, some useful discussion, some entertainment a little bit here. And I know there's, like I said, there's a little bit of trash talk in the chat. That's okay as long as it don't get too personal. And, but other than that, man, I've really enjoyed this. I hope you guys did too. Thank you to everybody for support. Thanks for liking, commenting. Just thanks for watching. For those of you who donate financially, thank you for that as well. And with that, I'm out, guys. Q Country Roads.